My Hero Academia has always been a show about an overpowered superhuman society, but that statement could not be more true for Cassie, or better known as Star and Stripes. The #1 hero of America with one of the most, who am I kidding, the most busted quirk in My Hero Academia, who by the way, was only killed off by plot armor so that our main character Deku could shine. So today I ask, what would happen if we actually gave Deku this busted ability? Would he be stronger or weaker than with him having one for all? And you know, I think the answer will probably surprise most of you. So get your snacks, get your popcorn, and welcome our special guest, because if you haven't noticed yet, today's video is a collab. So welcome our boy Puffinsverse and enjoy.
Deku was born, this timeline, on Island, keeping his parents the same but switching their jobs. Deku grows up there due to his mum being a scientist. His dad is, yeah. Like in canon, Deku was born quirkless. I know what you're saying. Quirkless? What the hell? Let me cook though. He grows up much like himself in canon, watching All Might saving people with a smile, always wanting to live the life of a hero. Now, one day Deku would be exploring with some scientist kids. You know, David Shield's daughter, some other random kids. They walk around the island in a group. Their parents are not really worried about them because, you know, it's a private island and there's nowhere really safer. They walk around seeing all the gadgets being created, all the people around them with flashy quirks, all the hero training equipment. Deku's eyes lit up seeing it all. Like a kid in a candy shop, Deku got a little carried away. He rushed off by himself to see some heroes completing that robot thing that we saw in the anime. You know, like where they destroyed the robots in like 60 seconds or whatever? The movie, not the anime. Anyways, he sits there in awe, seeing a couple of heroes get solid scores, destroying about 10 robots in 60 seconds. This is until someone enters that catches his eye. America's #1 hero, Star and Stripes. He watches from a distance as Star touches the floor below her. Ground! Her voice shakes his bones, a chill running down his spine. The ground will rebel against robots. In an instant, the ground below every robot in the field would shoot up, surrounding the robots and swallowing them up in an instant. Deku's shocked. The power, the finesse. He just found his new favorite hero. Afterwards, Deku waits and waits, hoping for an autograph, seeing as she finally comes at the tunnel, surrounded by her buds in the Air Force. She walks by as Deku in a weak voice starts to speak. "Can I have your autograph?" She keeps walking before stopping dead in her tracks, looking back at the small Deku. She kneels down to him, grabbing his notebook and signing it, starting to speak. "So kid, you want to be a hero one day? I saw you watching me before. Pretty cool, right?" Her Air Force buds behind her start hyping her up like, "Woo, hell yeah!" Deku nods, his eyes meeting hers. She hands the book back signed, asking me what his quirk was. Deku's smile begins to drop a little bit. "Well, David Shield told me I was quirkless, actually." The people in the background go quiet a little bit. They drop their heads and turn away. But Star and Stripe doesn't. She stares him down with a huge smile on her face, just like All Might, telling him he can be a hero. Deku lights back up again, punching the air in front of him and hugging Star. She gets back up, telling Deku they're on business right now, but in about 30 minutes, she'll be free. She asks Deku to show her around a little bit, which Deku of course agrees to. He sits outside David Shield's office, kicking his feet back and forward, just sitting and waiting patiently. Inside the office, David and Star begin to talk, talking about All Might's power and how it works. They start sharing stories of All Might before they start talking about All for One. David Shield had been tracking him for a couple of years for All Might, and it seems he was looking for her. This is before All Might fought All for One, so this is prime All for One searching for Star and Stripe. David speculates that All for One was after New Order, figuring there'll be nothing that could stop him, not even All Might if he got it. David stares Star and Stripe in the eyes. He warns her that if she fights him and loses, it's game over for everyone. She gets serious, her life flashing a little bit, before she doubles down, a smile forming on her face. "All Might would never run. I'm gonna kick that old man's ass so my master All Might can live peacefully." David frowns a little bit before smiling again, hopeful that Star could do it. She walks out of his office, seeing Deku sitting on a seat in front of her. Just then, an idea went through her head, an idea that she pushes to the back of her mind. She says David and her were old friends to Deku, leaving David's office knowing what she had to do. Deku from there shows her around. They talk for a little bit. She saw a young version of herself in him, a young version of All Might. She knew this kid could be a symbol, the next symbol. They get to know each other for the next 2 hours. She explains her quirk to Deku and how she's America's #1 hero. She explains how she was saved by All Might and her hero journey. They talk and talk until she says that she has to go, and that she might not be back for a while. Deku's of course saddened by this, starting to cry a little bit. She kneels down, touching his face. She tells him that he'll be a great hero one day, and that he will stand alongside her and All Might as one of the greats. She touches his face, ending it off by saying Izuku Midoriya. She gets up and starts to walk off. Deku's starting to cry and rolling on the floor and stuff, just going through it. She starts to cry too, finishing her sentence under her breath so Deku doesn't hear it. If I die, New Order will be immediately transferred to Izuku Midoriya. After that, she leaves for Japan, getting on some fighter jets like in the anime and rushing over to fight All For One. Like her versus Shigaraki, she meets him out at sea, battling for a solid 5 minutes until she slips up. All For One immediately goes for the kill, staring Star and Stripe down. With this, I'll be unbeatable. He starts to extract the quirk, only to find she was quirkless. She salutes to her brothers in the plane, staring them down before dying there and then. All For One leaving empty-handed, completely dumbfounded on what even happened. This is before he got Ragdoll's quirk, by the way, so he can't even search it out either. As Deku sleeps in his room, he tosses and turns. In his head, a nightmare was going on. He saw the premonition, the vision of Star and Stripe getting killed at the hands of All For One, until a voice went through his head, clear as day. Now, it's your turn. Deku wakes up, shaking himself out of it. He held his chest where Star got impaled, still feeling the pain that she felt. It quickly goes away as he woke up more and more. His body felt strange, he felt energized. Power, more power than he's ever felt. He couldn't sleep the rest of the night. He stayed up and just stared, staring at his hands. Something had changed. He goes down to Inko the next day, her asking what happened yesterday as he didn't really come home until late last night. He explains with a smile how he was hanging out with America's #1 hero, Star and Stripe, and how she told him he could be a hero. He then explains the dream he had last night and what he heard along with what he felt afterwards. She's a little confused by this, flicking on the TV to see breaking news. She stares on as it plays. She reads the big text, watching on as it explains that America had lost their #1 hero. She's shocked by this, right away turning the TV off, looking back at Deku. Because she's a scientist, the gears start to turn. Deku's dream, the words chosen by Star. She takes him to David's shield right away, getting Deku to explain the situation to him instead. Now, unlike Inko, David gets it right away. It clicks in his head like 2 Lego pieces. He remembers back to his talk about One For All yesterday. Maybe she got the idea from it and transferred her quirk to him to stop All For One from getting it. Right away he gets to testing, telling Deku to touch a metal spoon and say what it is. Deku would do so, being kinda confused, touching it and saying metal spoon. David then tells Deku to say what he wants the spoon to do, whatever he wants in the world. Deku thinks, float and spin around really quickly. It begins to levitate in David's hand, spinning like a Rasengan. David can't believe his eyes. He was right, she didn't die. She's gonna live on inside of this kid. He goes down and hugs Deku, which kind of freaks Inko out a little bit. He stops and backs up before staring at Inko and Deku. He sits them down with some tea and begins to explain. Knowing he would have to explain everything, he starts from the beginning. He talks to them both about One For All Might and how he can pass on his quirk, explaining All For One, his quirk, and how he tried to steal Star and Stripes. He then explains that Deku must have inherited his quirk from her. He asks Deku if she said his full name at all yesterday. Anything. Deku thinks back, remembering right as she left. He begins to cry right away, knowing the sacrifice she made for him. She inspired him and even gave him the tools to be great. He vowed to make her proud. David, seeing the fire in his eyes, would decide to help him train. He started him young, using all of his resources to make Deku as great as possible. From there on, Deku would be trained. Over the years, he would find out the limits of his new quirk. He got tips from Star and Stripe's old friends in the Air Force, meeting many pro heroes and training for pretty much every situation under the book, even meeting and befriending All Might. Deku would talk to him, explaining Star and Stripe's love towards him and how she would have loved being here. All Might would smile hearing that. Because he knows that Deku knew about One For All, he starts to explain the feelings of the predecessors of his quirk, how he feels like they still live on in One For All. He connects to Deku, explaining that though she might be gone, he thinks that transferring quirks is more than just a physical power, and that deep down he knows that Star still lives on inside of him, and that he knows that she made the right choice. Anyways, enough yap. I hope I set this up nice enough. Pretty much Star and Stripe gets sent on a suicide mission, dies, gives Deku her quirk, and he gets trained by a lot of people. Deku is now 14, having a borderline perfect control over his quirk, having even gained a slot for him to work with. So now he can have 3 commands at once. This is so broken, and probably where I'm going to limit it for a while, just because, like, yeesh. He can make himself almost as strong as All Might. I'm going to say about 60% full cowling, using a command on himself, along with 2 other slots that he can pretty much do anything with. Over the years, Deku would have actually fought All Might and won multiple times, knowing how to use his quirk to the max because, you know, he's seen another person using it already. He's pretty much seen every every fight Star and Stripe was in. She saw how she used the quirk. He even knows how she used it against All For One. Overall, he's cracked. About 2 months before the entrance exam, Deku was asked by David if he wanted to undergo a test for a pro hero license as well. The commission, having heard of Deku's power through All Might, would want to get him one ASAP, figuring he's too powerful to not be able to do anything if he sees violence or anything. Deku agrees to this, doing a private test on Island as to not show off his power too much to the public. Both Deku and David agreed that it was probably for the best that he didn't get to go into the public eye, at least not yet. He would easily smash it. Due to this, he gets his license pre-UA in this timeline. From there, Deku would be asked if he wanted to go to a high school, a fact that Deku hadn't really thought of. He kind of just figured he would just start being a hero off bat because he already has license. He thinks for a little bit before deciding he wanted to go to UA, knowing that All Might was going to be teaching there from a little bit of inside info. He's sent there by recommendation in this timeline, being recommended by the Shields. He's of course accepted by Nezu, being sent over to Japan by the Shields and Inko. He gets an apartment paid for right inside of UA, living alone in a private section on campus. He would fly in about a week shy of the exam. He gets there and gets the tour of UA by Nezu and the faculty. People excited for his arrival, everyone asking the questions, asking if the rumors were true and if he actually had new order. Deku smirks hearing this, deciding to stay quiet, leading to only Nezu, All Might and the Shields knowing, well, and his mum, but you know. The week would pass. Deku the whole time just getting his stuff packed away and set up in his new apartment, waiting until finally the exam commences. Now, Deku ain't no slouch, and if you didn't know, the recommendation exam is legit just the obstacle course from the sports festival. Like, look it up, the wiki says it's a 3-kilometer obstacle course. They're trying to save money or something. Deku seeing this gets hype. He's been training on stuff like this his whole life. He looks left to see Todoroki and Momo, looking to his right to see the wind guy and that mud guy. He smirks, touching his chest and saying his name under his breath. The starter's pistol goes off, the rest of them shooting forward as Deku just sits there. He takes a big breath in before breathing out once more. I will have no air resistance. Deku's smirk grows into a full smile, feeling his quirk take effect. He shoots forward at 60% one for all speeds, shooting right past the competition. In a second, he zooms at top speed, getting to the halfway point at 2 seconds. As he gets there, he sees about 8 0-point robots in front of him. He jumps up into the sky, laughing. The rest of the competition seeing him up in the air, hearing from the ground as he speaks. The air in front of me will explode within a 1-kilometer radius. Everyone on the floor hears his voice, feeling an aura of power they had never felt before. In an instant, the floor, walls, and 0-pointers in front of him explode. A huge invisible box in front of him completely filling with flame and carnage. For about 4 seconds straight, it burns, looking like a mini sun on Earth. Students and teachers are more than shocked. All Might smirking as it dissipates, everyone looking on as the smoke clears. All the contestants stood still, all of the teachers wide-eyed. Some of the contestants in the other batches see this and quit, knowing they weren't ready for stuff like that. As the smoke clears, it shows nothing in front of them. No 0-pointers, no land, no track, not even any dust. Deku's like, whoops, landing and shooting off once again before making it to the finish line in a total of 9 seconds, including destroying the 0-pointers. He completely blitzed past the 2 and 3-pointers, jumped over the pit, and made it to the minefield, where he sprinted as quick as he could, the mines behind him going off in a trail. As he finishes, no one can move. Pause. The power this kid just showed off was godlike. He's accepted there and then, Nezu needing no second opinion. Even Isaiah was shocked. He doesn't even need to go through the interview portion. Nezu already knew he was leagues above the fodder down there. Deku walks out the exam site, stretching his arms and cracking his neck. He knew he was him. He walks out the exam site, watching as the rest of the students keep running the obstacle course. They don't finish until he's already chilling at home. Deku completely oblivious to pretty much all of their quirks. For the rest of the week after that, he would just kind of chill. He goes out every now and then, getting accustomed to life in Japan. He gets some outfits, looking drippy. He'd even fight some villains, but on the low though, trying to not arouse All For One's suspicions. He calls his mum and David, doing all that boring stuff, until eventually his acceptance letter would come. Deku opens the letter to see a disc like in canon, a hologram opening, this time showing an old video of Star and Stripe, one she pre-recorded before she went on the flight to All For One. Deku sits down, eyes watering a little bit as it starts to play. In the video is her sitting in front of the jets she flew in on. She sets the camera down and gives a huge smile. She congratulates him and gives him even more encouragement, telling Deku about her real feelings pre-fight, how she kind of figured she wasn't coming back from this, but she knows that he's going to be a better hero than even her. Sorry, I'm not really good with dialogue. Anyway, the video cuts off. Deku sat alone in a dark, silent room again. He thought about the message, how she recorded it just for him, and how he still owes her so much. He puts the disc on his desk, smiling, knowing he was going to cherish it forever. This gives him extra motivation. A day would then pass and Deku would finally wake up on the day UA started. He woke up in a daze, looking over to his clock to see that class started in 5 minutes. He woke up frantic as ever, rushing into the shower, speedrunning it and brushing his teeth before getting dressed and rushing out the door. He taps his cheek. Izuku Midoriya, I can walk on air. He jumps up, starting to jump on the air like that one quirk Lady Nagant had. He skips all the way over to class, people below him watching as he leapt all the way through the gate of UA. He stops and falls before cleanly landing on the floor, taking a huge breath in before walking through the gate. He looks around, seeing all the new faces on the school. He saw the support kids, the second years, now third years. He made his way right to the door of Class 1A, checking his watch and seeing he was already 1 minute late. He closes his eyes, praying that he doesn't have a serious teacher. He opens the door of Class 1A, walking inside. He looks around, seeing everyone already seated and looking at the front. He slowly scans, seeing Aizawa's angry face looking back at him. Fuck! He slowly walks in, the class going silent as he does so. He scans the room again before finding an empty seat, sitting down as the class is dead silent, staring at him. Sorry, Mr. Aizawa, I slept in, if I'm being honest. Netta and Kaminari start to giggle in the back of class, thinking Deku would already be gone. They saw how strict Aizawa was, so they thought he was going to get expelled off bat. Aizawa stares at him, his hair standing up. You're lucky I know your worth. His hair falls down again, telling the class to go outside and get dressed before meeting him outside for their first test as UA students, the Quirk Apprehension Test. Everyone groans before doing so. Following Deku to the changing rooms, Deku gets dressed, people starting to stare at him. The dude's about 6'2" and lean. Remember, he's been training since he was 6. He looks like a Greek god. Kirishima can't even do the "you're manly" thing, but he's just stuck in awe, his mouth agape. Deku leaves, meeting Aizawa outside, being the first one there. He looks around before sitting down, looking at Aizawa. So, you're our homeroom teacher? I'm actually happy with that. Aizawa smirks. Don't just think I'll take it easy on you. If anything, you're getting it twice as hard. Pause. Deku smirks, looking back at him. Challenge accepted. Everyone finally meeting him outside after their conversation finishes. They stop and slowly walk towards Deku, who is still chilling on the floor. Aizawa explains what they were doing in this test, and it was a way to determine their worth in his eyes. The whole, "oh, this is unfair" thing goes down, and Aizawa would tell the class last place will be expelled. Ooh. He then throws the ball to Deku. To show you what I personally think you should all be aiming for, Deku here will throw the ball. Deku stands up, looking at the ball before looking at the people around him. So, well, am I just throwing it? Aizawa nods, cancelling his quirk. Deku cocks his arm back, throwing the ball about 120 meters. People are gassed about this until Aizawa smirks. Now use your quirk. People go silent. Nah, this guy's too busted. Deku smirks as well. You mind if you don't get this thing back? Aizawa looks at him. Not at all, kid. Go all out. Deku touches the ball, thinking for a second. Baseball. I think you should ignore gravity and friction for me. Ooh. And I want you to cackle with electricity, it'll look cooler. People are confused. Is this weirdo talking to the ball or something? Todoroki and Momo stop and stare until Deku cocks his arm back and throws it again. This time it shoots off. No air resistance and no gravity. His arm makes a thunder clap before it goes flying. It doesn't slow down either, it just keeps going. Going from 0 to infinity in about 10 seconds. The people in the recommendation exam get flashbacks to the kid they saw. Aizawa looked at everyone's reaction, knowing he proved his point. No one can speak as Deku goes back to rejoin them. The rest of the tests from there would go underway, going a little bit like this. I'm gonna hide Deku's power a little bit, just because I want him to use it in the 1v1s. But it would go a little bit like this. For the 50-meter dash, Deku would think for a second, people once again staring at him. Anything he did was so strange to them, his quirk didn't make sense at all. Deku touches his chest, wanting to keep it hidden a little bit. He only uses his strength, and one command on top of it. He says, Izuku Midoriya, I will be almost weightless except for my feet. He feels his quirk taking effect, people watching as the gun is blown and Deku blitzes to the finish line, getting about half a second. Deku stares at the grip machine, watching as that forearm guy gets a really high score. He gets a little bit competitive, staring at his hands, touching it and speaking once more. My grasp is firm as steel. The grip machine creaks and bends before snapping in his hands, people looking over as he opens his hand. Falling out of it is a completely crushed and useless machine. Aizawa looks at Deku with a, come on bro, that type of face, telling him to calm down a little bit before he breaks something else. For the standing long jump, Deku looks at the pit, this time not even using a command. He squats down with perfect form and shoots himself forward. I don't know how it's measured or what's good, but he clears the pit easy. The repeated side steps are the only one I can see him getting beaten in. He watches Mineta doing his strat and kind of resents him a little bit. The tests end and results are shown on the screen, no one even looking at them. They were all looking at Deku. Bakugo at the back of class trying to wrap his head around things. What? Who was this kid? Where did he come from? I've never heard of him in my life. Todoroki getting jealous. He stares at his hands, all the training he's done, all the mastery over his quirk, all to lose to Deku in the end. This immediately rubs the two of them the wrong way. Deku being their enemies off bat because they're jealous as. Of course Deku gets first place, and by a long shot too. People afterwards finally getting the courage to even speak to him, his aura having stopped them thus far. Kaminari is the first to speak, tapping Deku on the shoulder before asking what the hell was that. Deku looks at him. A nice little warm-up, I guess. Aizawa, I thought there'll be more tests. Aizawa smirks a little bit, watching as Deku walked off to go back home. He wanted to look clean before his next class, you know. People stopping and staring at Deku who walks away. Aizawa starting to talk. That's who you should be aiming for. I already know he's going to be the next #1 hero, and if I'm being honest, he's already my favourite hero. Aizawa being a little bit of a fanboy, you know. The class is shocked by this. The kid they never heard of is their pro-hero teacher's favourite hero. Anyways, from there Deku would freshen up, going back to school and sitting back down in class. If you're wondering who got expelled, by the way, no one. Well, Xehther might not remember this, but yeah, probably no one, I don't know. From there Deku sits in class. He starts to talk to the people of Class 1A, even talking to some of the 2nd and 3rd years. People like the Big 3 already aware of him because of the people that they do internships with. He sits in regular classes, math, English, science, you know, all the regular stuff. Getting top marks in all of them too, because his mum's a scientist and he grew up around David Shield of all people. He's not just strong, he's smart too. From there, about a week or so will blow by, Deku getting hyped for the one class he'd actually been looking forward to. Hero Training 101. He gets to class early, seeing Aizawa there. They chat for a little bit, Aizawa telling him he won't be there for this class, but someone familiar will. Deku goes through everyone he knows. In his mind it clicks. His face lights up, but Aizawa tells him to keep it a secret. He sits in his desk all giddy, watching as everyone came in. He looked around, waiting and waiting. People thought that he was tweaking a little bit, until they saw who he was waiting for. All Might slams the door open, coming in like a normal person. People going nuts. All Might! Papers get thrown in the air and stuff. He tells them to settle, before scanning the room. Oh hey, young Midoriya. I knew I saw your name on the class register. Long time no see, right? Deku's like, too long, All Might. How you been? They have a little bit of an NPC chat in the middle of class, people staring at them before they finally lock back in. All Might's like, excuse me, my bad. Anyways, booyah! He clicks the big red button, people watching as like in canon, their pro-hero suits come flying out of the, wall, I guess the wall. They all get hyped before getting changed. Now, Deku doesn't wear his usual outfit. You know, the one his mum made. I love the thought behind it, but I'm gonna be real, that thing was chopped. Deku instead rocks the same fit as Star and Stripe. People staring at him walking in. It all clicked in some of their minds, especially the people who got in through recommendations. His quirk, how it worked. It was exactly like that old hero, Star and Stripes. Now it made sense. They all sit and stare at him as All Might explains the battle trials. Getting people to draw lots, Deku being called up first and drawing his usual. Unlike usual though, Deku would be paired up with that bum with a tail. He looks over kinda saddened that he didn't get someone cooler, until he hears who he's versing. All Might calling out that Deku and the tail bum will be versing Bakugo and Todoroki. Deku looks over at the two of them. They look back with murderous intentions. Deku smirks, turning away and starting to walk to the front of the building. Him and that tail bum start talking, Deku figuring out his quirk in about half a second, figuring he would be useless in this trial. Instead, he talks about their quirks. From what he's seen, Todoroki has ice powers and Bakugo is a terrorist. Knowing this, they nod and walk inside. Deku right away touches his chest and the tail bums, speaking. Izuku Midoriya and Tail Bum will never freeze. The tail guy feels a power go through him like he's never felt before. A warm sensation going from his toes to the top of his head. He looks to Deku, who smirks to him. Deku tells him that he can counter Todoroki well now, but he should leave Bakugo to him. He thinks back, looking at Bakugo's face post-quirk apprehension. All Might from there tells him to go wild, allowing the heroes to move freely within the building. Deku and Tail Bum know Todoroki was going to freeze the place. It only made sense. But they know they can counter it anyway, so they walk inside. Deku walking ahead and deciding to go up to the next floor as Tail Bum searches the lower. Bakugo from the 3rd floor would fight with Todoroki. Who do you think you're bossing around extra? I'm gonna beat that Star and Stripe wannabe if it's the last thing I do. I'm gonna make sure he pays for being so cocky. Deku sprints to the first set of stairs, rearing them and walking up the 2nd floor. He looks around the place before he hears a strange thumping noise coming from above. He sits down and watches as Bakugo drops from the 3rd floor. Right away, he phones into Tail Bum, telling him the bomb's on the 3rd floor and to skip the 2nd as he's about to make it a battle ground. Bakugo stares at Deku, rearing explosions off in his hand. Well, guess my prey came to me. You know, I hate cocky people like you the most. He comes flying in, rushing at Deku at top speeds. Because Deku wasn't there too, Bakugo went wild with his quirk, bullying constantly and using his quirk more than in canon. So his explosions are actually stronger than in canon. Deku watches Bakugo flying towards himself, looking as he notices ice appearing from the floor and walls around him. He smirks, rushing Bakugo as well. Before the ice could hit, Deku weaves Bakugo's right hook, grabbing his arm and slamming him to the floor like Deku in canon. This time, he bounces off the floor. He bounces so high that he gets a wombo combo. Deku spins and slams Bakugo in the chest with a kick too. Bakugo sent flying into the wall, ragdolling midair before getting flash frozen by Todoroki. Bakugo being taken out of commission just like that. Deku stares at his feet, ice melting around him. He looks around, seeing water surrounding him. Oh, come on man, I don't want wet socks. He touches his shoes and socks, making them waterproof, making sure his fit stayed immaculate as Todoroki came down the staircase. He assumed that both Bakugo and Deku would be frozen together, with the tail bum being frozen in the lower floors. Todoroki walks around the corner with a smirk on his face, looking all cocky, until he sees Deku standing there with a puddle around him, completely untouched. Hey, you might want to unfreeze your teammate over here, he's kind of getting cold. Todoroki's pissed by this, sending a geyser at Deku which he doesn't even dodge. The class from the survey room starts watching. They watch from the cameras as the ice got within 30 centimeters of him before it drops and melts to water in front of him. Deku floats above it, Todoroki none the wiser. He got sick of all the ice coming at him, touching it and speaking. Ice. Return to sender, please. Right away, the ice Todoroki sent at Deku was retracted, flying in almost reverse time back into Todoroki's body, a feeling he'd never felt before. Deku looked at him with a smile on his face, something that pissed Todoroki off to no end. This is until Bakugo spoke up, the ice that was blocking him having been returned to. You can rot in hell. Damn Deku. He puts his arm up, Deku watching as a bright light came from the gauntlet on his arm. All Might would clock this, but in this timeline he doesn't say a word. He doesn't warn Deku, instead he lets him tank it. Todoroki watching as a light emanates from in front of Deku. Deku's silhouette gets burned into his eyes as Bakugo lit off the gauntlet right in front of the two of them. The explosion encases the entire hallway. Deku, thinking quick, would speak once more. Air! The air in front of me is hard as steel. Todoroki watches on as the explosion hits, but does nothing. The hallway in front of the two of them covered in smoke from all angles. Deku and Todoroki sit completely untouched. Todoroki can't even wrap his head around it. He saved him. This is until he's shaken awake by All Might coming over the intercom. Hero team wins! Todoroki looks confused as ever. Deku walking over and helping him up. You forgot I had a teammate, didn't ya? He face palms and they all walk back to the camera room. Deku of course gets MVP, people seeing how versatile his quirk is. Support, attack, deflection, defense. His quirk was crazy. All Might then gets an idea, deciding he wanted to talk to Deku about something after class. The rest of the battles go about how you would think. Deku watches them all, showing off his analytic side a little bit before the class ended. He's called over by All Might into a private room before he deflates. Damn, you're looking rough, All Might. How long you got now? All Might's like, 3 hours max in my full form, then I'm stuck with this. Which is what I'm here to talk to you about, young Midoriya. Do you think you could heal me at all? Deku thinks for a second, being shown the injury again. He decides he may as well try it. Now, I've got no clue what command he would use. He can't just say like, All Might will heal 3 times as quick, because that just don't make sense. He would have said something that allows his healing to spread to his organs as well, allowing All Might to grow back his old and broken respiratory system. It does put him into a deep sleep, or like a coma, but Deku knows it'll work. During this time, All Might goes through the predecessor's memories, like Deku in Season 5 or something. Through this, he gets more in tune with One For All, and maybe even unlocks their quirks, that's up to Xehther. Either way, All Might is out for recovery for at least 3 months following this. And following this, Deku now had 2 commands on at all times. 1 on himself, making himself as strong as All Might, and 2 on All Might, making him heal much quicker. Due to this, he only has 1 command left. After the Hero Training 101, class would go on, the class being told about the USJ. He gets his mum to sign his form electronically, allowing him to go. About a week or so would go by until finally they would make their way there. The class gets onto the bus like in canon and starts to make their way over. They have the regular chat, Froppy asking everyone who they think is the strongest. Deku, of course, is placed number 1, so really it's a battle between Todoroki and Bakugo. They argue this out in the bus the rest of the ride over until they finally make it. Walking inside and being greeted by Pro Hero 13. She does her little NPC speech, which Deku is so clued out of that he starts to stare around him, looking at the fountain and scanning the USJ until he sees something out the corner of his eye. A mist forming in the middle. Right away, he warns Pro Hero 13 and Aizawa, telling the class to run towards the door and out of the USJ as quick as possible. They're all confused. I'm not gonna listen to some kid, until Aizawa backs him up, explaining that they have company. 3/4 of the class starts running, making it outside, only the big hitters being left inside as Korigiri appears. Deku, seeing this, looks at 13 before yelling for her to use her quirk. Korigiri fully forms, starting to talk about "We are the League of Villains." Noticing right away that he was getting sucked in, he tries to make another portal, but Deku touches Pro Hero 13. Pause! Your quirk will be 10 times more effective. Right away, Korigiri is cooked. He gets sucked into the black hole, Deku barely seeing as Kirishima and Bakugo jump in. He jumps in just in time, saving him before Pro Hero 13 sucks Korigiri up completely. Pause, bro, pause! Just like that, Korigiri is wiped from existence. The pros looking on at each other as Deku landed on the floor, holding the two of them. "Get off me, you damn nerd!" Bakugo starts to walk off, Kirishima thanking him for the save. They look around, seeing the villains swarming the place. Deku and Aizawa scan the place, seeing the two of them at the center of it all. He looks at Aizawa, smirking, an idea coming to his head. He walks over to him, touching him on the shoulder. He transfers the 60% one-for-all power to Aizawa from himself, making Deku just a regular kid again, but making Aizawa a beast. He then uses his remaining command to make Aizawa never have to blink. With this, Aizawa is sent down alone as Deku walks with the rest of his class. If you didn't get that, by the way, Deku gave Aizawa the power he has active on himself like all the time, along with making it so he didn't have to blink, which makes it so he could use his quirk without strain. I think people sleep on Aizawa too much, so I thought I'd let him shine for once instead of getting slammed into the floor by the Nomu. Aizawa from below goes mental. No villain can stand up to him. They're all made completely quirkless before being taken out in an instant. He's shocked, feeling the power coursing through him. Is this what Deku feels like? This is crazy. He gets lost in his own head and gets distracted, Shigaraki tweaking. "Nomu, kill the pro! I don't know how he got so damn strong!" He looks around as Nomu jumps at Aizawa. Shigaraki's looking for a path out. He was missing Korigiri and he just saw all the fodder fall before his eyes. He watches as Nomu slams Aizawa in the head with a punch. Aizawa is sent flying into the wall, coughing up blood and falling down. He gets up just in time, shaking himself out of it. He picks his head up, watching and cancelling the Nomu's quirk just in time. It punches at him, slower but still as powerful as before, slamming Aizawa again, which he barely slips. From there, they run the ones. 13 watching from above as Aizawa fought the Nomu. Shigaraki in the background getting more and more pissed. "No, no, no! What's happening, Nomu? Kill him already! Let me get the hell out of here!" Shigaraki can do nothing but watch as Aizawa slams the Nomu into a wall, completely decimating it while the Nomu was quirkless, killing it accidentally, the power being too much for him to control at once. He stops and turns to Shigaraki, his hair standing on edge, his eyes flickering red. Shigaraki falls down. No, I can't die here! Until he's saved. All for One watching on the CCTV with a quirk would pull Shigaraki out immediately, using that black goo quirk, teleporting him home before Aizawa was about to take him out. Shigaraki looks up at All for One. "Master, was that you? You told me that thing could kill All Might. It couldn't even get around Aizawa." All for One stands. "I know, quite the predicament we're in, aren't we? Now do you see why you must get stronger?" Shigaraki gets PTSD from this, figuring it out a lot sooner than in canon. Due to this, he takes up All for One's agreement, taking the surgery and receiving his power from Season 6. From there, the doomsday clock starts ticking. Shigaraki about 3 months away from waking up, same as All Might. After this, the police come and question everyone, Aizawa being the main one questioned. Because, the rest of the class didn't really do anything. The USJ incident happened without a cinch, and no one got hurt in this timeline. And that is where I'm going to be leaving it off. I hope you've liked it. If you did, please subscribe. I'm close to 1k, it'd be cool if I could hit it. Plus, you made it this far anyways. From here on, it's the one and only taking it to the full movie version. I hope you like the build up thus far, and I hope you like the end of the full story. Stay safe, and catch ya.
Alright, Puffin, you absolutely killed that, so I'm gonna hope to keep up that same momentum for my part. But as for you guys, I just gotta say, we gotta get this dude to 1k, like genuinely. 300 of you guys had to have liked the way that my man was cooking. So go check out his page and just show this man the support that this man rightfully deserves, because he went crazy. Oh, and if you guys want to see more of us, check out What If Deku Was Kobe's Reincarnation or What If Deku Had Hockey. Not quite sure which one of those two I ended up naming the video, but regardless, go check that one out when you're done with this. That said, let's pick off where my boy left off. Continuing the story after the events of the USJ, the students would go on a short little bit of a break, which Deku fully takes advantage of, just kind of working out and giving his body a little bit of a break that he's been needing. I mean, the dude's been non-stop training ever since he was given the quirk New Order, so I figure this is kind of in order. That said, after this would finally be over, the students would all return to school, and this is when they would be informed about the festival, with some questioning, what? We're still having that after the USJ? And Aizawa would go on to clear up that of course they are, that actually the school had decided to do this to show that in light of the fact that that attack had just taken place, they're still willing to show something like that. And they think that it'd be more of a discouraging thing if they were to not do that, so of course they're gonna do this. And so with that being said, everyone gets extremely excited, with Araraka of course being the one to get the most out of everybody, and eventually class ending with everybody just thinking about how well they're going to be performing, and some others just being like, damn, I can't believe I'm going to be embarrassed on national television. This sucks. But regardless, as Izuku would be exiting the classroom, this is when Izuku would know that there was a lot of people there. Way more than the usual 0. So Izuku, noticing and looking around, he would see that these were clearly general course students and even some class 1B mixed in. And Izuku, noticing this, would kind of just be like, there any particular reason you guys are all here? To which murmurs would start to happen, with people talking about how Deku's the next star in Stripe and how he's her successor. Izuku hearing that would kind of cringe a little bit, with Izuku hearing the name of Star being thrown around so carelessly. Izuku in this moment would think to himself that he doesn't have the time for this, as Izuku would simply mutter, "New Order. The air around me will create a path for me to walk through," as a slight breeze would push some of the students by, with Izuku leaving just kind of having a little bit of an aura farm moment. After this, we're kind of just going to jump cut straight to the day of the sports festival, with Izuku being given the honor of giving the speech, seeing as they knew Bakugo was going to be doing something stupid and that Izuku was going to be the talk of the town, seeing as there's been a lot of rumors about Izuku possessing Star and Stripes quirk. And today, all those rumors were about to be confirmed. So, with that said, Izuku would give a little bit of a speech, inspiring everybody, just a little bit of lip chatter, as eventually midnight would announce the first event, with the obstacle course race. The Izuku, hearing this, noting that this is going to be the perfect opportunity to showcase just what his quirk can do, would simply say, "New Order. I will have no air resistance, and the air in 10 kilometers will propel me forward," as Izuku would go flying off, with everybody watching him going, "What? He can fly? Star never did that." And as everybody would watch him on, they would be like, "Oh, there's no way he has Star's quirk. She was never able to fly, right?" And so, as Izuku would go propelling forth, suddenly Izuku would undo one of his commands, as he would say, "New Order. Explode," touching two of the robots as he would zip on by, causing them to have a chain reaction and obliterating every 0-pointer standing in his way. This would leave multiple proctors absolutely stunned at Izuku's quirk progression, as he would fly on forth, eventually making his way to the mine section, with Izuku noticing that 2 characters were getting awfully close for comfort, and so Izuku would simply touch the ground commanding, "New Order. Every mine will explode," as suddenly every single one of them goes on to set off in 3 seconds, leaving Izuku a huge fiery explosion to be in his background, as he would clear the entire thing in record time. People would be stunned, going, "What? How did he do that?" With President Mike going on to say that, "You've heard right, ladies and gentlemen, Izuku Midoriya possesses the quirk New Order, Star and Stripes, the previous #1 hero in America, and he has been making incredible usage of a quirk very similar to hers, which is why it's been dubbed New Order." Everybody hearing this would be like, "Whoa, so he's like what, her successor?" With people saying, no, didn't you hear? His quirk is only similar, not exactly the same thing." So everybody would kind of calm down, as after this would take place, Izuku would kind of start showboating a little bit, with all the competitors just being pissed off and be like, "Ugh, that damn Deku." This is when every single person who isn't part of Class 1A and is more on the realistic side would then think that they're going to be crushing him during the next event. However, once the next event would be announced, a lot of them would change their tune, because the next battle would actually be a battle royale. Seeing as I hate the cavalry battle, like I genuinely despise it with a passion. So we're not going to be doing that. And instead, the event's going to be changing to go more like this. 10 students are going to be going into the stadium at a time, and the final 4 to come out awake are pretty much going to be the ones to move on. So Izuku would be matched up with Class 1B students and a ton of general course, as well as one other Class 1A student, Kirishima, who at the moment of noticing that Izuku was in his section would go over to him going, "Hey Izuku, you think you can give me a pass? Maybe don't rough me up too badly?" With Izuku chuckling and being like, "Trust me buddy, I'm gonna make sure I don't do nothing to you. Me and you, we gotta stick together." The two of them would fist bump, with Kirishima being excited as he would say, "All right," hardening his body, as Izuku looking towards him would pretty much tell Kirishima that he can't wait to do this section. And as soon as it would begin, Monoma would rush towards the direction of Izuku going, "I'm gonna be taking that quirk of yours now." And before he can get up close, Izuku would proceed to say, "New order. There will be no oxygen in the air around me." As everybody there would start to pretty much start choking, with the exception of Kirishima and Izuku, who would both be standing there completely unaffected. This is when the dude with the beast quirk would push through, thinking to himself that all he has to do is take Izuku out, so he has a few seconds before completely passing out. So he and a couple of other students that are inside of the radius that has no air would lunge towards Izuku, attempting to take him out, with the general course students falling unconscious and Monoma and the dude with the beast quirk rushing in. Izuku, noticing that they had more will in them than he had thought, would suddenly then create a giant kaiju version of himself out of air, using his quirk New Order to simply smack them out of the arena, completely unconscious. And with that being the case, the two remaining general course students who didn't try to rush at Izuku would be standing just outside of the radius for the no oxygen, as the 4 of them would be passed, with Kirishima going, "Ah, dude, I wanted to actually fight." Izuku would rub the back of his head, just being like, "My bad dude, guess I kind of overdid it." As Izuku would then pretty much watch on as the 2 other students would practically back out, saying that they don't exactly feel like wanting to move on to the next portion, especially considering the fact that they didn't do nothing. So similarly to what the students who were on Shinso's team in the normal cavalry battle of course would have done, these two would do the same, meaning that the guy with the beast quirk and Monoma would move on to the 1v1 battles. And with that being the case, let's cut to who Izuku's first opponent's gonna be. We zoom into Izuku in the waiting room area when suddenly Izuku would be called up for the 3rd match, with his opponent being Hitoshi Shinso. Yep, nothing's really going to be changing. However, the fight definitely is, because as soon as the match would begin, Izuku could hear Shinso practically complaining about just how lucky Izuku is to have a quirk like that he must have serious attention and just practically get to walk around in life on easy mode. Izuku hearing that would kind of have like a frowning face, as Izuku would realize that he'd probably have that same feeling if he was in Shinso's shoes, as Izuku would walk over towards Shinso without saying a word and touching him, saying, "New order. Shinso will be as strong as I am." As Shinso's body would buff up, and Shinso would stare up at Izuku, who would simply hold his hand out saying, "Let's have a good match." Shinso would shake it as he would tell him that he made a big mistake, and then he would attempt to clobber Deku with his newfound super strength. However, Deku, of course being the more experienced of the two, would proceed to absolutely destroy Shinso, with the shockwaves that they would create from their punches having been kept inside of a spherical dome that Izuku would have created using New Order. And after all this would finally be done, and a few seconds of really cool clashing, Izuku would tell him it was fun, before finally punching him out of the arena, as Shinso could feel the power fade, thinking, "That's incredible. Who would have thought there was quirks out there that let you feel like that? What a rush." Shinso would look up at Izuku, giving him a look of just like, "Thanks, like, I really appreciate getting to feel like that, even if it was for a fleeting moment." As Izuku would walk off waving his hand, with us then zooming into Todoroki, who would be closely watching Izuku and seeing his golden locks flowing in the wind. As Izuku would make his way towards the waiting area, this is when Todoroki would go over to him and say, "Izuku, we need to talk." And so, Todoroki would proceed to say, Izuku Midoriya, are you Star and Stripe's secret love child? To which Izuku would burst out laughing, going, what? Dude, you're kidding. There's no way you thought something like that. As Todoroki would look at him seriously, going, I'm not joking. And Izuku would go on to say, alright, look, I get it. I get why you would think that, but my hair's dyed, you see, and I have no actual real connection to Star and Stripes. I just happen to have been born with a quirk that was practically the same thing as her. Maybe I'm related to her in some way, but other than that, definitely not her child. Todoroki, hearing that, would look down thinking, oh, guess it's a shame. I thought it was going to be the battle of titans, since you are the son of the previous #1 and I'm the son of the #2 in Japan. Izuku, hearing that, would tell Todoroki that none of that stuff matters and would pretty much go on to tell him to have a good fight. As before he leaves, he would hold his hand out and touch Todoroki's shoulder, saying, New order. Todoroki is quirkless. Todoroki would hear that, being shocked, going, what? You can't just... As Izuku would say, relax, dude. Let's just have a good match. I was just pulling your chain. As he would walk off, with Todoroki staring at Izuku and thinking, something about that guy just rubs me the wrong way. And so the match would begin, with Todoroki instantly starting things off with ice rushing towards Izuku, creating a massive iceberg. But the second the ice would become into like moments of contact with Izuku, Izuku would say, new order, ice will melt within 30 meters away from me. As Izuku would suddenly start to hear people in the crowd go, oh, what happened? As he would realize that, yeah, that was a bit too far. And there were some people in the crowds who actually had their little iced drinks get completely watered down, which, you know, if you're drinking a nice cold beer, which I imagine would probably be cool for all the people that do it, they would probably be pretty upset when their drink gets watered down. I personally have never done something like that, and I think it's disgusting, but hey, who am I to judge? Anyways, that being said, Todoroki would be stunned at the fact that his quirk was practically completely neutralized, with Izuku looking to him and telling him that it's his bad, but he kinda wanna get to the final already. So, as he would then speed blitz Todoroki, going to punch him in the gut. However, Todoroki would proceed to shoot fire at him, with Izuku smirking, saying that he had already planned for that, saying that fire will be repelled entirely by an invisible force around my body. And the fire would go all around Izuku as though he had like car's aerodynamics. Like it would just go around him like air goes around a car. And with that being said, he would slam Todoroki into the wall, caving him into it and leaving him completely unconscious, with everybody being like, whoa, did you see that? With Izuku genuinely starting to hear some #1 chants and people saying that he's the clear MVP of this entire thing and that he's really the only reason anyone came out to watch this. So with that, Izuku would smile and wave and pretty much just get ready for his third match, which in this timeline would be up against Tokiyami. Seeing as the order of participants would have been messed up, seeing as in this timeline Ida wasn't here because his spot was taken by Monoma, and Momo wasn't here because her spot was taken by that one beast guy who got by on a, well, technicality. So with that being said, Izuku would start the match by saying, new order. The sun rays will be 10 times more potent around my opponent. As suddenly, the area around Tokiyami would become unbearably hot, and seeing his sunlight is literally Tokiyami's weakness, this would just completely destroy the guy, with him passing out to a heat stroke and Izuku canceling the new order, as Izuku would point his hand towards the camera and say, beware villains, now that I'm here, none of you will be safe, as the crowd would go absolutely nuts, eating that whole thing up, with Izuku simply smiling and a certain someone watching on as well, all for one, who would say, indeed, you are getting stronger, as he would stare at the doomsday timer, counting down 5 months and some change left, with the final match finally beginning, which in this timeline would pretty much just be Deku versus Bakugo, because the guy would get pretty lucky with his list of opponents. That said, Bakugo would turn to Deku, telling him, you know, Deku, without that fancy quirk of yours, you wouldn't be able to lay a scratch on me. And Izuku, looking towards Bakugo, would say, doesn't the same apply to you? Without your explosion quirk, you're not even half a terrorist. As Bakugo would say, damn it. But Izuku would simply smile, saying, but I'll play your little game. New order. Izuku Midoriya will be quirkless for a minute straight. Bakugo in this moment would smirk, going on to crack his knuckles and telling Izuku that he's an idiot, going to rush at him trying to blow him up, but Izuku, taking account of this, would dodge, knowing that without the durability that he normally gets from his buffed up state, that was gonna sting. And because he's been training since he was 4 years old, once Bakugo got into a certain radius, it was kinda GG, because the dude proceeds to get whooped on Toji style, and a couple of minutes later we see Izuku on the podium being given his golden first place medal, with some other hero other than All Might giving it to him, seeing as the guy was still in a little bit of a comatose state, thanks to that little plot point that Puffin had left behind. Which, by the way, bro, if you're listening, I thought it was pretty sick what you did there, but as for the time that it's gonna take All Might to heal, I actually want to change that a bit. Which is why I'm going to quickly go over the Stain arc, or in this timeline, the Captain Celebrity arc. And in case you guys don't know who that is, that's pretty much just the #1 hero in America. Or the new #1, considering that Cassie being gone kind of leaves a hole for America. So with that being said, as Izuku would be inside of his classroom choosing his new hero name, which obviously is going to be Star, he's going to go through the applications that he got and go to pick the #1 hero in America, being quite intrigued with the possibility of going to train with the new #1 over there, seeing as their own #1, All Might, was still in a bit of a comatose state, still healing after the surgery that Izuku had put him through. Or, not surgery specifically, but y'all know what I mean. So with that being the case, Izuku would go over towards America, and once there, Izuku would actually feel as though he had wasted his time, considering that being with Captain Celebrity, Izuku would have pretty much been taught how to showboat, with little to nothing actually useful that Izuku could use, seeing as most of the things that Captain Celebrity thought he was teaching Deku were things that the kid was already aware of. So with that being the case, by the time that Izuku would return back to school and the internships would be over, everybody would enter the classroom, to which Aizawa would walk inside and go on to tell them that today they're actually not going to be taking their hero course, because he now finally has to tell them of some news that he hasn't exactly been wanting to go over with. This, however, would be the exact moment that All Might would enter the room and say, "I am here! Aizawa, can I please pull Izuku out for a second?" Aizawa, seeing this, would look at him, be like, "Can you not read the room, you idiot?" As he would go on to tell Izuku to go after All Might, telling him that it's probably for the best that he's not here. As Izuku would leave, and All Might would proceed to smile at Izuku, with Izuku asking him how it went. All Might would look at him before explaining to him that things went perfectly well, and Recovery Girl even kissed him, so the recovery time was sped up 100%. He would go on to explain to Izuku that he no longer has to struggle with the pain, or even go down to a Small Might form. And Izuku, hearing that, would smile, telling him that he's glad. That's all he's been wanted since the thing happened. All Might would smile as he would go on to essentially inform Izuku of some other not so happy news. He would look at him and tell him, "Young Midoriya, I assume that what Aizawa was about to go over with the class was the death of one of your classmates." Izuku would say, "What are you talking about? Everybody," until it hits him. "Ida. No, there's no way the class rep's dead, right?" But All Might would look down before showing Izuku his phone and showing him the incident that took place. Something that not many people were aware of, thanks to the Ida family having pulled some strings and pretty much told the news not to let the story get out there. It's bad enough one of their sons was hospitalized, but the other was killed. This is not a good look. So with All Might explaining this, Izuku would kind of just sit down and take a second to process this, with him just thinking, how could this have happened? Why? All Might would explain to him that the hero killer Stain was on the loose in Hosu, and he was responsible for the injury of the pro hero Ingenium. And Izuku, hearing this, he would think, that makes so much sense. Ida was always a bit of a stick in the mud, but saying that Izuku would feel bad, as he would pretty much just think to himself that Ida did kind of feel like he was from a loaded family, to which All Might would go on to look at him and say, "It's okay. You still haven't even finished processing that Ida's gone, so it's natural that you'd be talking about him as though he was still here, but yeah, Ida's gone." The room would go silent, with Izuku realizing what really just took place, and that All Might was entirely correct. He was acting like that because it still didn't really hit him, but now it did. All Might, however, would stand up, looking out the window, as he would go on to tell him that things actually are going to get a bit worse, with Izuku looking at him and asking, "What, did someone else die?" As All Might would explain that that's not quite it. However, people will die very soon, unless they take care of the man who's on the move. Izuku, hearing that, would go, "Don't tell me. He's..." as All Might would nod and say, "All for one. He's on the move. We've gotten some inside information from one of the members of the League of Villains we captured, and we've discovered that All for One is the true leader behind this. He's planning something, Izuku, something big, and we need to be ready to stop him." Izuku, hearing that, would stand up as he would look at All Might and tell him that him and All Might will make sure that All for One will end up behind bars for the rest of his life, with All Might looking at Izuku, placing his hand on his shoulder and telling him that that's not why he brought him in here. As All Might would go on to explain that even with his injuries being healed and him being back at 100%, he's not sure he could handle All for One even now, going on to explain to Izuku that even Star had failed, and with him naturally declining due to age, he doesn't think that he's going to be posing more of a challenge. He would go on to tell Izuku that as he is now, he believes Star would have beat him back when she went to fight All for One. So he would look at Izuku one more time before telling him that he's here because he wants to offer him one for all. And Izuku, hearing that, would go, "What? All Might, there's no way. You can't be serious right now. I already inherited Cassie's quirk. I can't just go taking New Order and One for All as though it's like nothing." As All Might would go on to explain to Izuku that he needs him to take it, that with the world in the state that it's in, if All for One's plan was to become successful, and he and Izuku were taken out in a last-ditch effort fight, then there will be no hope for Japan. But forget Japan, there will be no hope for the world. Izuku, looking to All Might, would understand what he's trying to say, and though he doesn't want to accept it, he would look to All Might before telling him that he understands perfectly, as he would explain to him that he'll take the quirk. But he would go on to ask, "But are you sure you could even pass it on to me? I mean, I already have a quirk myself, right? Won't that be a problem?" As All Might would go on to explain to him that it shouldn't be, considering that his master had a quirk called Float, and she was able to be not passed down, but she was able to receive One for All. So Izuku, hearing that, would simply think, "Alright then, let's do it," as he would suddenly look to All Might, who rips out a hair and goes, "Eat this!" Izuku would stare at it going, "All Might, you've gotta be kidding me. There's no way you're pulling a prank at this time." As All Might would respond, "No, young man, I promise, this is entirely true. In order to inherit my quirk, you have to ingest some of my DNA." And Izuku, hearing that, would simply swallow his pride, as he would also do a hair with it. And after this, Izuku would clench his fist going, "I don't feel any," when suddenly Izuku will feel his body start to practically tear apart. The power of the two quirks would be way too much for his body to handle, and as Izuku would feel himself fall down to the ground with every muscle fiber in his body practically starting to spasm and cramp, Izuku would cry out, "New Order! My body can properly host the quirks!" As Izuku would feel a surge of electricity going through his body, and he would stand back up, clenching and unclenching his fist, just staring at his hand going, "Whoa, All Might, this is incredible." All Might would stare to the direction of Izuku, telling him that he had no idea passing the quirk on was going to do something like that to him, explaining to Izuku that the Doomsday Theory must have been right, and that Izuku handling both of these incredible quirks must have just been too much for him to handle. Izuku would smirk, saying that he's glad that he had Cassie's quirk of all things, as All Might would go on to pretty much say, "Yeah, you better thank your lucky star." As both of them would kind of just look at each other with like a little bit of a smile on their face, until All Might would say, "So, you want to test your new quirk out?" And Izuku would nod as the two of them would make their way outside, going to training grounds where All Might would tell Izuku that they should get warmed up with a light spar, clenching and unclenching his fists, cracking his neck a little bit before saying, "You ready, young man? I won't be holding back." As he would lunge to the direction of Izuku, and on the first punch, Izuku, not having a proper handle on his strength, would absolutely shatter All Might's fist, as All Might's arm would be sent flying back like when he had that fist clash with All for One, and Izuku would watch on as All Might would be ragdolled all the way to the end of the building, going flying out of it, with All Might just being like, "Damn, kid," and him like kind of like holding his arm, with Izuku just standing there looking at his newly like more buffed up arm than ever, and think to himself that this is incredible. And due to the command that he had used earlier, Izuku now is able to not only wield 1% of One for All, or 30 or 40, but all of it. Every single little bit of the quirk is perfectly under his command. And For that, all Izuku had to sacrifice was, well, one of his new orders. Considering that Izuku has 3 and Cassie only had 2, this is a bit of a bargain because the dude practically gets new order and all for one, and it pretty much costs the dude nothing, which is pretty sick considering that this already overpowered Deku has just become a complete monster. The dude is now officially like straight up planetary level, and there's no way you can convince me otherwise. But all that aside, with Izuku now having access to all these quirks, we now pretty much are gonna get to cover about 5 months worth of events in the story prior to when we actually get to the final battle, which I honestly can't even wait to cover. So continuing forth with the story, after about a week or so of the students being given some time to like grieve and process everything that's happened with their, school rep, they would pretty much be told about the final exams and the forced training camp coming up. And since nobody cares about the practical test, we're going to be skipping straight to the actual hand-to-hand combat section, where we're going to get to see Bakugo and Deku face off against All Might. And this fight is going to be very one-sided, at least to begin with, because when Bakugo rushes in trying to completely ignore anything Deku's saying, he would get mollywopped. Like, did you guys watch how horribly All Might did this, man? He shoved his knee into his stomach, slammed his face into the concrete ground, and if he did that in the original, just imagine how much worse his beating's gonna be now that the dude has access to his 100% form. Yeah, it's a bit of a massacre. So with that said, after Bakugo would be completely taken out, Izuku would crack his knuckles saying, "You ready, old man?" As All Might would say, "Ready as I'll be. Come at me. Just remember, All Might, you asked for this. New order. I can harness the sunlight as laser beams." As grabbing at a beam of light, Izuku would toss it to the direction of All Might as if it was like a Kizaru attack, and this thing would stun him because it would travel at the speed of light, hitting All Might as he would cover himself with his hands, blocking his field of vision, with Izuku muttering under his breath, "New order. My presence will vanish." Suddenly, Izuku would appear behind All Might as out of nowhere, the dude grabbing 2 laser beams from the side, go in to slam them at All Might's head, as All Might would grab both of his arms trying to resist the motion, with Izuku smirking, using a tiny bit of One For All's power to start overwhelming him, using 10, 20, 30, 40, until Izuku's strength would surpass All Might's and he would proceed to slam them into All Might, knocking the dude out instantly. As Izuku would stand above All Might and tap his face going, All Might, are you good?" All Might would stand back up lightheaded going, "Young man, I'm assuming you won, right?" Izuku would look at him and go on to explain that he did, with everybody in the class being stunned. You're kidding. He's stronger than All Might? How is this even possible?" People would start to say. Zaizawa in the training room area would go on to say, "All of you need to shut up. Just watch what your classmate's done, analyze his behavior, and take it into account for whenever you face villains." Everybody would quickly quiet down, but the second Izuku would enter the room, they all go nuts. They're like, "Dude, you're stronger than Symbol of Peace All Might," with Bakugo being in the nurse's office still recovering. All the while Izuku is getting the glazing of his life. But regardless of that, after these events would take place, the next arc to follow, which I normally wouldn't cover, but just due to the fact that Izuku did grow up on Island, I figure we can actually cover the Two Heroes movie, seeing as there's really nothing else to cover from this arc forward, considering the fact that the next events to come up is the Forest Training Camp arc, which if you will remember, Shigaraki is out of commission, meaning that never happens since Shigaraki's plan never gets formed. There's no hideout raid arc because Bakugo doesn't get kidnapped. The Provisional Hero License exam arc completely gets cancelled, considering the fact that Izuku already has one of those. And when it comes to the Overhaul arc, you know what? I think that one does kind of have a chance to happen, but considering how weak Overhaul actually is in comparison to Izuku, he'd probably get one shot. But I'm not going to take that away from you guys. I'm going to cover at least that little Aura Farm moment, since I'm sure some of you guys will be eager to find that out. And after that takes place, we kind of get the Remedial Course arc, the UA Festival, the little internship that they go with Endeavor normally, and then the joint training arc. And by that point, I am assuming that All For One everyone will fully be ready and fully integrated into Shigaraki's consciousness, meaning that by that point, All For One will be more than ready to face off against Izuku. So with that being said, let's get into the actual Island arc. With everything that's been taking place happening, Izuku thinks that it'd probably be a cool time for his classmates to have a little bit of a break from school and have a moment for them all to just kind of get the hype and excitement that the class had back. So Izuku going to school one day would say, "Hey everybody, I've got an announcement to make." As everybody would look to him and go, "Yeah Izuku, what's up?" Izuku would then go on to say, "Since our self-proclaimed Clash rep is no longer with us, I figured we could have an event to bring us all closer or something." As the class would smile and Izuku would continue, "Look, just to be real, I know things haven't exactly been the best and we've all been feeling the repercussions of losing Ida, but truth be told, I want things to go back to the way they were, and I'm sure Ida would want that as well. So for anybody that wants to, here's some invitations to Island. We're going to be showing a Hero Expo very soon, and I'm going to be wanting all of you guys to make it if you can." Everybody would get extremely excited, with Izuku being like, "I can't wait to see you guys there," and Momo being like, "Oh wow, I was actually going to go anyways. It's incredible that I'm actually going to be able to spend time with my classmates. This is a huge blessing." Everybody would look to Izuku and I'll just be like, "Thank you Izuku," as they all make their way to the Island Expo and just have an incredible time, where Izuku just spends the entire week showing all his friends the cool inventions, introducing them to his parents, and his non-official girlfriend, Melissa Shield. As everybody would greet her, Mineta would pull Izuku to the side going, "Hey Izuku, is that yours?" Izuku would smack Mineta in the head, telling him to keep his pervy little eyes off of her, that she's taken. With Melissa hearing that and just kind of chuckling, Izuku would go on to pretty much take everybody around the island, with him talking to Melissa and saying that it's been a while, that he did miss her company, with her saying, "Oh yeah, you miss me so much, you've barely talked to me." With Izuku saying, "You know, I have been going to UA," and her saying, "Yeah, and I've been in this school learning how to make all these gadgets for you." As Izuku would look to Melissa and say, "Oh, you finally made it?" She would go on to smile at him saying she did. Izuku would thank her as he would go on to explain to her that he needs a little bit of help with, showing the people around. He would say, "I'm thinking maybe you can show the girls around and I can show the guys around for the party." And Melissa would smile going, "Of course," as literally this entire Island event would just go by perfectly smoothly, considering the fact that we know that All For One was the one pulling the strings in the original timeline. And since All Might has already been healed, and in this timeline David Shield is aware of All Might's reason for actually losing his quirk slowly, that pretty much means that there's no reason for the villain Wolfram to have gotten under him and pretty much staged the whole incident that takes place. So with that said, we end up skipping straight to the section of the story where the students all go on to meet the big three. And with that being the case, Izuku meeting Mirio and getting accustomed and acquainted with him after their battle that he would have had with him after he would have beat up his entire class would have led Mirio to be like, "Dude, you're awesome. I can't believe a first year was able to hand it to me that badly." As Mirio would go on and tell him that he would love it if he could intern at his internship, maybe show him a thing or two, right? As Izuku would look at Mirio and say, "Well, I can't say I can deny that. It's not like I had any plans." And so going with Mirio, Izuku would make his way there, meeting Sir Night-Eye, who's staring at Izuku knowing just how strong he is, wouldn't even try to play the games of, "Oh, let me test you, get this stamp." He pretty much just accepts Izuku right away and says, "So it appears All Might chose you. Well, I can't say I'm too angry at this pick, considering just how incredible of a hero you've already proven yourself to be. Go out there and patrol the streets with Mirio, and don't get ahead of yourself." Izuku hearing that would nod, going, "Yes sir," as he would make his way out with Mirio, and shortly after, Izuku would find himself bumping into a small little girl, who looking up at him would look terrified. She would go on to grab at his leg, unwilling to let it go, with her saying, "Sir, please don't leave me." And Izuku just staring at Eri, feeling horrible, knowing that that man must have done something bad to her. Izuku in this moment would then go on to say, "New order. My enemies will crumble in my presence." As Overhaul staring at Izuku would see a titan of a man, with him attempting to grab at the floor and shoot a spike at him in fear, just cowering in a Frieza-esque type moment. However, Izuku's not a fool. He would go on to create a jail cell that's kind of like a mime jail, if you guys have ever seen those dudes playing with the air, acting as though they're inside of an invisible prison, with Overhaul unable to even make contact with anything. Izuku would look at him, telling him that he's going to the authorities, as he would go over to Eri, pat her on the head and tell her that she will never have to see that man again. He would then stare at Overhaul saying, "Apologize," as Overhaul would stare at him with these eyes of fear before then just saying, "Eri, I'm sorry." And Izuku would then smirk as he would say, "The air inside the cell will disappear." Overhaul in this moment would fall unconscious practically immediately, with his vision getting hazy and watching Eri smile for the first time. Izuku after this would go on to give her to Aizawa, and the events with her would play out much like they do in the original, without Mirio losing his quirk and with the whole Shai Hisaki raid happening, but this time it goes down a lot smoother than in the original, as we would jump cut like 5 months into the future, or sorry, no, not 5 months, but like 2 months into the future, where we would now see the joint training camp arc happen, and as Bakugo would be having his battle against Class 1B, destroying them, suddenly black portals would begin to open, as Shigaraki would step out with a bunch of villains by his side and hundreds of Nomu swarming the area. The heroes all noticing this would begin to freak out, as All For One staring down Izuku in this new body would say, "It's been a while. New order?" As Izuku would look on in shock, realizing that he's not addressing him as his name, but the quirk itself, with All For One having a crazed look on his face, telling Izuku that he's gonna be taking the quirk that rightfully belongs to him. But as all this chaos would be taking place, Izuku would suddenly speed blitz in front of All For One, telling him, "All enemies will be rendered quirkless," with All For One hearing that and literally losing his ability to levitate in the air. He would fall down to the ground with a loud thump, as Izuku would stand over him telling him that he didn't think he was going to be winning so easily, now did he? All For One would say, "How did you do that? New Order doesn't function that way. If it did, you would have used that attack last time." But Izuku would stare at him, telling him that New Order got a little bit of an upgrade, as he would then say, "One for all, 20%, before punching All For One straight in the head, knocking the dude out. With all the Nomus being rendered completely quirkless, they would all be taken down in rapid fashion by Class 1A, 1B, and the teachers who were around, as well as All Might. As the final scene that we would get of All For One would be one of him behind prison bars, with every single restraint you can think of, before a judge would say, "We sentence you to the death penalty." Izuku would go over towards All For One, telling him that his reign of evil ends now, as Izuku would be shot into his mindscape and Izuku would see the previous user of New Order. Not the users of One For All, but he would see Cassie standing there, who would smile at him saying that she knew she was right about him, bringing Izuku in for a hug as the screen would fade to black. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is where What If Deku Had New Order is going to be wrapping up. Let me know down below in the comments if you guys enjoyed this one, because I definitely enjoyed making it, and I'm positive that my boy Puffin did as well. So go check his channel out now that you guys are done with this. Don't forget to leave a like on the video, and it has been your boy Xehther signing off. Peace.
I am here, thanking you for making it to the end of the video. Remember to leave a like, subscribe, and share it with a friend, and stay plus ultra!